Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is the 1949 Cleveland Indians MLB baseball season. Again, the Tribe was playing in the American League, the junior circuit of Major League Baseball, and home games were played at Cleveland Municipal Stadium downtown off of East 4th Street. Right off Lake Erie. Tribe had a strong year. In 1949, they finished in third place with a record of 89-65, winning percentage of .578. Very good. 8 games out of first. The first place team was the New York Yankees, who were 97-57, winning percentage of .630. Second place, the Boston Red Sox, 96-58, 1 game out of first. Third place, the Cleveland Indians, 89-65. Fourth place, the Detroit Tigers, 87-67. Fifth place, the Philadelphia Athletics of Connie Mack, 81-73. Sixth place, the Chicago White Sox, 63-91. Seventh place, the St. Louis Browns, 53-101. And in eighth and last place, the Washington Senators, who were 50-104, winning percentage of .325, 47 games out of first. I'm reading a fine book. The title is The Kid, The Immortal Life of Ted Williams by Ben Bradley Jr., 2013. The movie The Kid from Cleveland was produced in 1949, and many of the Cleveland Indians players appeared, including Lou Boudreau, Bob Feller, Satchel Page, Jim Hegan, Larry Doby, Joe Gordon, and so forth, and as well as owner Bill Veeck. And the filming was done in May and June in 1949 for the Tribe at League Park. On May 31st, the local shopkeeper, Charles Lupica, climbed a pole in front of his drugstore, and he vowed that he would not come down until the Tribe was in first place. He spent 117 days on top of this pole that had a 4-foot by 6-foot platform. His wife gave birth during that time, and he did not come down until the Tribe had been eliminated. In May of '49, Bill Veeck hired Harrison Dillard, the Olympic champion sprinter, to work in the front office of the Tribe. Tribe attendance in 1949 was 2,233,771, an average of 29,010 per game, the second highest all-time after 1948 until 1995. In 1949, the movie South Pacific was produced with Mary Martin and Enzio Pinza, and Milton Berle was popular on television, known as Uncle Milty. In the off-season, Eddie Robinson and Ed Kleeman were traded to the Senators for Mickey Vernon and Early Wynn. Spring training for the Tribe was in Tucson, Arizona. The black players, Larry Doby, Minnie Minoso, Satchel Page, Artie Wilson, and Roy Wellmaker, were not allowed to stay at the team hotel because of racist practices. They stayed with private families in Tucson. Bob Hope was a Tribe minority owner, of course a famous comedian at the time and for many years, and he was in uniform in spring training. And Hope said, quote, "Really, I came down here to get Lou Boudreau's trophies. I'm going to melt them down and go into the copper business." In 1949, the Tribe had 14 black players in the organization. On August 2nd, they were in second place, 2.5 games out of first, and that was the high point of the season. The owner of the Tribe was Bill Veeck, who was also the general manager. He was the Tribe owner and GM from 1946 to 1949. There was a party to honor Bill Veeck on February 5th, 1949 in New York City at the La Pavillon, hosted by Elsa Maxwell. And the famous artist Salvador Dali was a guest there. And Dali said this to Bill Veeck, quote, I know nothing about baseball, absolutely nothing." And then Veeck said, quote, "Well, that makes us even," although Veeck did know a lot about art. Later, Dali talked to Lou Boudreau at that party, and he said, quote, "I understand we have much in common. There is surrealism in baseball, too. Men wearing strange clothes, crouching in moonlight, and reaching for objects frequently unattainable." The same day of the party, Veeck's wife, Eleanor, filed for divorce on the grounds of desertion. And on November 21st, 1949, Veeck sold the tribe for $2.2 million because he needed to raise money for his divorce settlement. He sold the team to a group of businessmen led by 45-year-old insurance executive Ellis W. Ryan. And Veeck made a profit of $500,000 from owning the tribe. There was a lunch at the stadium, and he said goodbye to the staff. Veeck said, quote, "It's been swell. I hope you had as much fun as I did." In 1951, Bill Veeck bought the St. Louis Browns, or he led a group that bought the team, and he signed Satchel Page. Hank Peters was an assistant farm director there. Later was tribe GM. Veeck remarried Mary Frances Ackerman. He signed Eddie Gadel, a midget, who was 3 foot 7 inches tall, 65 pounds. And on August 20th, 1959, the second game of a doubleheader at Sportsman Park in St. Louis, the Browns against the Tigers. In the bottom of the first, Gadel led off for the Browns, wearing number 1/8, and he walked on 4 pitches. After that, American League President Will Harridge voided Gadel's contract and banned midget players. Veeck demanded a ruling regarding Phil Rizzuto. He asked if he was a short ball player or a tall midget. And Veeck said, quote, "I assume that they feel Eddie Gadel provided unfair competition. I might humbly suggest that Ted Williams also provides unfair competition as far as St. Louis is concerned." 1952, Veeck offered a contract to Buck Leonard, who was a Negro League legend. However, Leonard turned it down. He was 45 years old, happy playing in Mexico, and believed he was too old to play Major League Baseball. One of the players for the St. Louis Browns was Ned Garver, and he said this, quote, "I thank God for the time with Bill, though it be little more than a year. He loved baseball and its fans and was always trying to improve his product. You knew he might trade you at any time, but he made you feel 10 feet tall when you were with him. He helped me be the best pitcher I could be. Nobody likes a phony, but there was nothing phony about Bill Veeck." In 1953, Veeck tried to move the Browns to Baltimore. He thought that St. Louis couldn't support 2 teams, but he was blocked by American League owners and then pressured to sell the team after 1953. And then in 54, the St. Louis Browns moved to Baltimore and became the Orioles. In 1954, Veeck was researching Los Angeles and San Francisco for Major League Baseball on behalf of the Chicago Cubs. By 1955, he was a scout for the tribe, and Hank Greenberg, tribe GM, said this, quote, "Bill Veeck belongs in baseball, and we don't want him to lose contact with the game, to which he has contributed so much." By 1955, Veeck was the vice president of the Miami Marlins, a minor league baseball team. And on August 7th, 1956, the Miners set a minor league attendance record for a game with 57,713 fans, in a game in which Satchel Page pitched and won 6-2. By 1959, Veeck led a group to buy the Chicago White Sox, and he won an American League title with them that year, the first for the White Sox since the 1919 Black Sox. Stan Isaacs of the Newsday traveled with Bill Veeck to Comiskey Park during the season, and he said, quote, "When we were stopped for a light, people called to Bill Veeck, shouted at him. He smiled and laughed with them. He was a Pied Piper of joy. He owned the city." 1960, Veeck had the White Sox with an exploding scoreboard. If a White Sox player hit a home run, there was flashing strobe lights and fireworks, as well as a foghorn, fire engine, siren, a cavalry charge bugle, and the William Tell Overture. He also had last names sewn on jerseys. This was the first time in MLB and became popular for most of the teams. On June 25th, he had an operation that year, in 1960, on his right leg, amputating 3 more inches of his leg above the knee. By 1961, he was having serious health trouble. He smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day and had to cut down to 1 pack a day. By June of 61, he had to sell the White Sox because of these health troubles. Early Wynn, who pitched for him in with the White Sox and earlier with the Tribes, said, quote, "I know I speak for all of us when I say that you have been a hell of a lot more than just the boss. You have been a wonderful friend. All of us will always cherish your friendship." The book Veeck as in Wreck, a Veeck biography by Ed Lynn, published in 1962, was an instant bestseller. William Braden, the Chicago Times, was amazed by Veeck's ability to talk about anything, and he said this about a talk he had with Bill Veeck, quote, "Between bites of a double corned beef sandwich, Bill Veeck discusses the nature of disasters, the geometry of baseball, the Milwaukee Braves, democracy, Treasure Island, Herman Melville, the development of the Ford Tri-Motor, friendliness, the sea literature, luck, free will, telephone numbers, jazz, and Medicare, among other things." In 1964, Bill Veeck wrote in Popular Science Monthly, quote, "Baseball has never been accused of being progressive. In the words of one ballpark operator, if it wasn't done in 1901, it can't amount to much." 1964, Veeck was a commentator for ABC's Wide World of Sports. And as part of his work, he was in the Comiskey Park manager's office. There was in the Chicago Tribune reported that Veeck, quote, "looked more at home than Whistler's mother in her rocker." 1966, Veeck said, quote, "The National League is superior to the American League these days because the National League stocked up on Negro players, while the American League was sitting back and admiring how nicely the Yankees were getting along without them." In 1966, there was the Bill Veeck Show, a 5-minute radio show. He called Satchel Page the 9th, 10th, and 11th wonders of the world. Veeck said, quote, "Having a fine ladies' room in a baseball stadium is second only to a winning team in importance." He wanted to buy the Washington Senators in 1969 and hire Elston Howard to be the first black manager. That did not work out. In 1968, he was the president and CEO of Suffolk Downs, a horse track in East Boston, Massachusetts. In 1972, he was asked if he would return to Cleveland and buy the Tribe, and he said probably not. He quoted Robert Browning. He felt he could never recapture that, quote, "first fine, careless rapture." By 1976, he led a group to buy the Chicago White Sox again. In 1977, with the White Sox, he had Bob Lemon as the manager and Larry Doby and Minnie Minoso as coaches, all former Cleveland Indians. On opening day, 1977, all fans threw out the first pitch. They were given 20,000 styrofoam baseballs that were distributed. In 1977, the White Sox had won 90 games and had a record 1.7 million attendance. Veeck was voted MLB Executive of the Year. In 1978, he hired Larry Doby as the second black manager in MLB. On July 12, 1979, they had Disco Demolition Night at Comiskey Park in Chicago. They were going to blow up disco records, and there was a riot, and the team forfeited. The fans, things really got crazy. People were high on marijuana. They had to have police in full riot gear to restore order, and there were 37 arrests. Veeck was optimistic before the 1980 season. John Schulian wrote, quote, "There is a school of thought that William Veeck Jr. invented euphoria. During this time, anyone could call and speak with Bill Veeck on the telephone. Any fan, they'd put him straight through. In 1981, he sold the White Sox again. He was 66 and in poor health. In that same year, he was in the bleachers. He would go to Cubs games and sit in the bleachers at Wrigley Field. In 1982, Tom Fitzgerald of the Arizona Republic wrote about Bill Veeck in spring training for the Cubs in Phoenix, Arizona, and he wrote, quote, "Bill Veeck limped through the crowd, looking as proud as a man who could be the sole survivor of the last voyage of the Pequod. He might have been the one man who smelled Moby Dick's breath and lived to tell about it." 1984, Veeck had cancer, a spot on his lung, and his one lung was removed, and he said, quote, "I now have a lung and an eighth, a leg and a quarter, 40% of my hearing, and one legal eye. I figure I've given the rest of the world as much of an edge as I'm going to give." 1985, Veeck called Art Modell, the Cleveland Indians owner, and expressing interest in buying the Cleveland Indians. He died in 1986. At his funeral, the homily was given by Father Thomas J. Fitzgerald, who said, quote, "Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest." I think that was a quote from Shakespeare. Minnie Minoso was at the funeral wearing a White Sox uniform with the floppy collar, a retro uniform. 1991, Veeck was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and his wife, Mary Frances, said, quote, "Life was not wasted on Bill Veeck. He was born with a great joy of living, tremendous energy and integrity. He was curious, imaginative, creative, spontaneous, stubborn, intelligent, opinionated, and witty. He was such fun to be around, a Pied Piper. He was magic." Bill Veeck. Jack Graney was back as a radio broadcaster for WJW, and Graney played for the Cleveland Naps and the Cleveland Indians in 1908, from 1910 to 1922, and was a Tribe radio broadcaster from 1932 to 1953. Jack Graney. Jimmy Dudley was his partner on the radio at WJW, and Dudley was a Tribe radio broadcaster from 1948 to 1968. Jimmy Dudley. Bob Neal broadcast Tribe games on television for WEWS. Neal was born in 1916 and died in 1983 at age 67. He worked primarily in Cleveland, Ohio, was a graduate of Columbia University, Tribe radio broadcaster in 1946 and from 1957 to 1961, and 1965 to 1972. Tribe TV broadcaster in 1949 and from 52 to 53, and from 62 to 64. He was the original Cleveland Browns broadcaster on radio and television from 46 to 51. And in 54, he was broadcast the Orange Bowl for CBS. He did the 1955, 56, and 57 World Series. He was a sportscaster for KYW-TV, now WKYC-TV, with weatherman Joe Finan. Bob Neal. Tris Speaker was also a TV broadcaster for WEWS in 1949. Speaker was a Tribe player from 1916 to 1918 and a Tribe player manager from 1919 to 1926. And he also appeared in the movie The Kid from Cleveland. Tris Speaker. Mel Harder was the pitching coach. Harder played for the Tribe from 1928 to 1947. Was a Tribe coach from 1948 to 1963. He threw out the first pitch at the Cleveland Municipal Stadium in 1932 and the last ceremonial pitch in 1993. Mel Harder. Bill Mckechnie was the third base coach. Mckechnie was a Tribe coach from 1947 to 1949. And so this was the end of his time in Cleveland. He was a Red Sox coach from 1952 to 1953. Bill Mckechnie. Steve O'Neill was a Tribe coach. He played for the Cleveland Naps and Cleveland Indians from 1911 to 1923. O'Neill was a Tribe manager from 1935 to 1937, and he was a Tribe coach in 1935 and 1949. So this was the end of his time in Cleveland. He was the Phillies manager from 1952 to 1954. Steve O'Neill. Muddy Rule was another coach. Rule was a Tribe coach from 1948 to 1950. And during the season, he was promoted to become the assistant farm director. Muddy Rule. George Suss was another coach. Suss was a Tribe coach from 1941 to 1949. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. He continued as an MLB coach up until 1972 with the Texas Rangers. George Suss. Lou Boudreau was the player manager. Boudreau batted .284 with 135 hits. He scored 53 runs, 20 doubles, 3 triples, 4 home runs, 60 RBIs, 70 walks in 134 games. Boudreau was a Tribe player from 1938 to 1941 and the Tribe player manager from 1942 to 1950. Lou Boudreau. Jim Hegan was the starting catcher. Hegan batted .224 with 105 hits. 54 runs scored, 19 doubles, 5 triples, 8 home runs, 55 RBIs, a stolen base, 49 walks in 152 games. And Hegan was with the Tribe from 1941 to 1942 and from 1946 to 1957. Jim Hegan. Mickey Vernon was the first baseman. Vernon batted .291 with 170 hits. He scored 72 runs, 27 doubles, 4 triples, 18 home runs, 83 RBIs, 9 stolen bases, 58 walks in 153 games. Vernon was born in 1918 in Marcus Hook, Pennsylvania, and died in 2008 in Media, Pennsylvania at age 90. For his career, he batted .286 with 2,495 hits, 172 home runs, and 1,311 RBIs. He was also a manager and had a record of 135 and .227 for a winning percentage of .373. He played for the Washington Senators, Cleveland Indians, Boston Red Sox, Milwaukee Braves, and Pittsburgh Pirates from 1939 to 1960. and was a manager for the Senators from 1961 to 63. Vernon was a 7-time All-Star in 1946, 48, from 53 to 56, and in 58. He won a World Series title in 1960 with the Pittsburgh Pirates as a coach. He was the American League batting title champion in 46 and 53. Was the first manager of the expansion Washington Senators, who are now the Texas Rangers. He's had an MLB record for career double plays by a first baseman. Vernon went to Villanova University. In the Second World War, he was in the U.S. Navy and served with Larry Doby on Ulithi Island in the Pacific. He inspired Doby to become an MLB player. Vernon was one of the best-liked ball players with a unique personality, very charismatic, and a quiet style. One of 29 players to appear in 4 decades. He was a coach with the Cardinals, LA Dodgers, the Montreal Expos, and the New York Yankees. He managed in the minor leagues in AAA and AA levels. He also was with the Kansas City Royals. He was the American League leader in doubles in 46, 53, and 54. There's a Mickey Vernon Museum in Radnor, Pennsylvania. Vernon said this, quote, "The best thing about being traded to Cleveland was that I won't have to bat against Bob Feller, Bob Lemon, and Gene Bearden. It should add at least 20 points to my batting average." Mickey Vernon. Joe Gordon was at second base. Gordon batted .251 with 136 hits. He scored 74 runs, 18 doubles, 3 triples, 20 home runs, 84 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 83 walks in 148 games. And Gordon was with Cleveland from 1947 to 1950 and was the Tribe manager from 1958 to 1960. Joe Gordon. Ken Keltner was at third base. Keltner batted .232 with 57 hits. He scored 35 runs, 9 doubles, 2 triples, 8 home runs, 30 RBIs, 38 walks in 80 games. Keltner was with Cleveland from 1937 to 1944 and from 1946 to 1949, so this was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1950, and he's in the Tribe Hall of Fame. Ken Keltner. Dale Mitchell was in left field. Mitchell batted .317 with 203 hits. He scored 81 runs, 16 doubles, 23 triples, 3 home runs, 56 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, 43 walks in 149 games. And Mitchell was with Cleveland from 1946 to 1956. Dale Mitchell. Larry Doby was in center field. Doby batted .280 with 153 hits. He scored 106 runs, 25 doubles, 3 triples, 24 home runs, 85 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, 91 walks in 147 games. And Doby was with Cleveland from 1947 to 1955 and in 1958, and was a Tribe coach in 1974. At spring training, the Santa Rita Hotel in Tucson, Arizona refused to allow black players to stay there with the team, so he stayed with a private family. Chester and Lucille Willis and their children. On May 25th in Washington, D.C., Doby hit the longest home run of his career at Griffith Stadium, 500 feet plus. He was on the All-Star team in 1949. Doby and Eddie Robinson tied for the league lead in the American League by being hit by the pitch 7 times. Larry Doby. Bob Kennedy was in right field. Kennedy batted .276 with 117 hits. 49 runs scored, 23 doubles, 5 triples, 9 home runs, 57 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 37 walks in 121 games. Kennedy was with Cleveland from 1948 to 1954. Minnie Minoso said this, quote, "The player who helped me the most that spring in 1949 was Bob Kennedy. Bob taught me a lot about playing the outfield. He had one of the finest arms from right field I have ever seen." Bob Kennedy. Now, the bench players included Ray Boone, who was a shortstop. Boone batted .252 with 65 hits, 39 runs scored, 4 doubles, 4 triples, 4 home runs, 26 RBIs, 38 walks in 86 games. And Boone was with Cleveland from 1948 to 1953. His grandson Aaron Boone was with the Tribe, played for the Tribe in 2005 and 2006. Ray Boone. Thurman Tucker played some outfield. Tucker batted .244 with 48 hits. He scored 28 runs, 5 doubles, 2 triples, 14 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 18 walks in 80 games. And Tucker was with Cleveland from 1948 to 1951. Thurman Tucker. Johnny Berardino played some third base. Berardino batted .198 with 23 hits. Scored 11 runs, 6 doubles, a triple, 13 RBIs, 14 walks in 50 games. And Berardino was with Cleveland from 1948 to 1950 and in 1952. And he had a prominent role in the movie The Kid from Cleveland, Johnny Berardino. Allie Clark played some outfield. Clark batted .176 with 13 hits. He scored 8 runs, had 4 doubles, a home run, 9 RBIs, 4 walks in 35 games. And Clark was with Cleveland from 1948 to 1951. Allie Clark. Luke Easter played some outfield. Easter batted .222 with 10 hits. He scored 6 runs, 3 doubles, 2 RBIs, 8 walks in 21 games. Easter was born in 1915 in Jonestown, Mississippi, and died in 1979 in Euclid, Ohio at age 63. He played in the Negro Leagues and batted .285 for his career with 105 hits, scored 68 runs, 19 doubles, 10 triples, 11 home runs, 66 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 51 walks in 104 games. He played for the Washington Homestead Grays from 1947 to 1948. In MLB, Easter batted .274 with 93 home runs and 340 RBIs. He played for the Cleveland Indians from 1949 to 1954. Easter was 6'4" and weighed 240 pounds. There's confusion about his birth year. Could be anywhere from 1911 to 1921. His father graduated from the Tuskegee Institute. It was the same. Easter went to the same high school as Quincy Troop, who played for the Cleveland Buckeyes and was a star player in St. Louis. Easter dropped out of high school in the 9th grade to work. He worked as a shoe shiner, hat maker, and a dry cleaning business. He played semi-pro baseball for the St. Louis Titanium Giants company team for the National Lead Company. And one of his teammates was Sam Jethro, who played for the Cleveland Buckeyes. He played in exhibition games in the Negro American League. In the Second World War, Easter was in the American Army, U.S. Army. His given name was Lucius. They called him Luke. He worked in the defense industry as well. 1948, in the Negro Leagues with the Grays, he hit .363. 1948, he won a Negro League World Series title with the Washington Homestead Grays. Bill Veeck purchased him for the Tribe, and in 1949, he was in the Pacific Coast League with the San Diego Padres. His coach was Jimmy Reese, who said, quote, "Luke Easter is the only player I ever saw who can hit a baseball as far as Babe Ruth." 1950, he was a 34-year-old rookie and led the league in being hit by the pitch. 1952, he was 13th in the American League in the MVP voting. He had knee and ankle trouble because of his advanced age and retired from MLB. Played in the minors for the Ottawa Senators, Charleston Senators, and Buffalo Bisons, and the Rochester Red Wings. He was in the International League MVP in 1957 for Buffalo, retired as a player in 1963, and had several years as a coach. His number was retired by the Rochester Red Wings, number 36, and also Buffalo, number 25. In 2008 and 8, he was inducted into the International League Hall of Fame. He was known for his powerful home runs, which were called Easter eggs. In 1948, with the Grays, he was the first player to hit a home run into the center field bleachers at the Polo Grounds in New York City, 475 feet. As a Tribe rookie, he hit the longest home run at Cleveland Stadium, 477 feet over the auxiliary scoreboard in right field. Mickey Mantle is the only other player to do that in 1960. In Buffalo, he hit a home run over the center field scoreboard at Offerman Stadium, 500 feet. In the minor leagues, he coached Boog Powell and Kurt Blefary. After he retired as a coach, he returned to Cleveland and worked for the Aircraft Workers Alliance. He was the chief union steward for TRW in Euclid, Ohio. In 1979, he was shot and killed outside a bank at East 260th Street in Euclid, transporting $5,000 from payroll checks. 2 robbers with shotguns came, and he refused to turn over the funds and was shot twice at close range and died. His Woodlands Hill Park in Cleveland's Mount Pleasant neighborhood was renamed Luke Easter Park. He was a good-natured, practical joker. He owned and operated a sausage company in Buffalo and would give 5 pounds of sausage to teammates who hit home runs. He's in the Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame, inducted in 1997. and it was written, quote, "He had grace and dignity on and off the field, a legacy as a friend to the community, a generous soul with plenty of time for any cause." Bill James called Easter the second best first baseman in the history of the Negro Leagues after Buck Leonard, and wrote that he was, quote, had a, quote, "an amiable, fun-loving man who gambled, wasn't 100% honest, and had a temper, shoulders that crossed 3 lanes of traffic. If you could clone him and bring him back, you'd have the greatest power hitter in baseball today, if not ever." He was a tribe coach, and he was also in Venezuela and Mexico. In one game, Easter was in the dugout, and Al Rosen hit a home run. Easter, quote, "leaped up in glee and knocked himself out. He hit his head on the roof of the dugout." Luke Easter. Al Rosen played some third base. Rosen batted .159 with 7 hits. He scored 3 runs, had 2 doubles, 5 RBIs, 7 walks in 23 games. And Rosen was with Cleveland from 1947 to 1956. One day in spring training, there was an exhibition game in the South. Rosen and Larry Doby and a third player were in a taxi, and Doby was told to get out because he was black. And Rosen was angry and wanted to fight the taxi driver, and this in support of Larry Doby. Al Rosen. Mike Tresh was a spare catcher. Tresh batted .216 with 8 hits. He scored 4 runs, had an RBI, 5 walks in 38 games. Tresh was born in 1914 in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and died in 1966 in Detroit, Michigan at age 52. For his career, he batted .249 with 2 home runs and 297 RBIs. He played for the Chicago White Sox from 1938 to 1948 and with the Tribe in 1949. Tresh was an All-Star in 1945. This was the end of his MLB career. His son Tom Tresh was an MLB player from 1961 to 1969. He caught every White Sox game in 1945, 150 games, one of 3 20th century catchers to play in every one of his team's games in one season. Tresh died of cancer at age 52. The minor leagues, he played for the Beaumont Exporters, the Moline Plowboys, Henderson Oilers, Wausau Timberjacks, Shreveport Sports, Toledo Mudhens, Portland Beavers, and Daytona Beach Islanders. Mike Tresh. Hal Peck played some outfield. Peck batted .310 with 9 hits. He scored a run, had a double, 9 RBIs, 3 walks in 33 games. And Peck was with Cleveland from 1947 to 1949. This was the end of his MLB career. Hal Peck. Minnie Minoso played some outfield. His given name was Orestes. He batted .188 with 3 hits. Scored 2 runs, had a home run, an RBI, 2 walks in 9 games. Minoso was born in 1925 in Perico, Cuba, and died in 2015 in Chicago, Illinois at age 89. He played in the Negro Leagues and batted .312 with 154 hits, 91 runs scored, 31 doubles, 12 triples, 8 home runs, 67 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, 41 walks in 118 games. He played for the New York Cubans in the Negro Leagues from 1947 to 1949. In the MLB, he batted .298 for his career, really good, 186 home runs and 1,023 RBIs. Minoso played for the Cleveland Indians, Chicago White Sox, St. Louis Cardinals, and Washington Senators between 1949 and 1980. He was a 9-time All-Star from 1951 to 54 and 57, and from 1959 to 1960. He won 3 Gold Gloves in 57, 59, and 1960. 3-time American League stolen base leader from 1951 to 53. The Chicago White Sox retired as number 9. He's in the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame, inducted in 1996. They called him the Cuban Comet and Mr. White Sox. He was the first black Cuban in MLB. And Minnie Minoso and Willie Mays led MLB to have a resurgence in speed, using as an offensive weapon stolen bases. He led the American League in being hit by the pitch 10 times, a league record during his career. One of the most popular and dynamic players in Chicago White Sox history. He played for the Go-Go White Sox. From 1964 to 73, he was a player-manager in Mexico, and the 3rd player to have a hit after age 50, and the 2nd player in MLB to play in 5 decades. There's a Minnie Minoso statue at U.S. Cellular Field in Chicago, erected in 2004. He's in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame in Exile in 1983 induction. His father worked at a sugar cane plantation in Cuba. In 1963, he He played in the first and only Hispanic American All-Star game at the Polo Grounds in New York. I'm reading a fine book. It's called Just Call Me Minnie, My 6 Decades in Baseball by Minnie Minoso with Herb Fagan, 1994. Orlando Cepeda wrote this, quote, Minnie Minoso is to Latin ball players what Jackie Robinson is to black ball players. He was the first Latin American baseball player to become what in today's language is a superstar. All Latin ball players should pay a special deference to him for what he did for us. If things are better today, if people are more open-minded and willing to help the Latin kids of today, it is because Minnie and others like him paved the way. 1993, Minoso played for the St. Paul Saints in the Northern League at age 67 and had a ground ball to the pitcher for an out. In 2003, he also played and was the only player to play in 7 decades. In that game with the St. Paul Saints, the owner was Mike Veeck, the son of Bill Veeck. 1993 was baseball's first 6-decade player. In 2003, the first 7-decade player. Minoso said, quote, I got the chance to play professional baseball in the U.S., both in the Negro Leagues and the Major Leagues. Who could ask for more? It was the dream of every young boy. I enjoyed myself immensely, and have never forgotten the debt of gratitude that I owe this wonderful country. He was a teammate, and one of his teammates in Cuba was on the Mariano team was Charo Horta, father of George Horta, who later was a Tribe player. Nat King Cole dedicated a show to Minoso when he was performing at a big club in Havana, Cuba. He was also friends with boxing champion Joe Louis. Playing for the New York Cubans in the Negro League, Minoso said, quote, seeing the Empire State Building for the first time was just unbelievable. There are bigger skyscrapers today, but then it was by far the tallest building in the world. Playing at Yankee Stadium for the New York Cubans, Minoso said, quote, what a wonderful feeling using the Yankee locker room, where the retired numbers 3 and 4 of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig were displayed in front of their lockers. Their uniforms, their gloves, their bats, their caps, they were all there. The Negro Leagues carried a rich and proud tradition. I am just so happy to have been a part of it. I faced lots of great pitchers in my time, and I can say in all certainty that Satchel Page was one of the greatest pitchers who ever lived. As with the Dodgers, the Cleveland Indians were far ahead of their time in signing black players. Minnie Minoso. Hank Edwards played some outfield. Edwards batted .267 with 4 hits. He scored 3 runs, had a home run, an RBI, a walk in 5 games. Edwards was with Cleveland from 1941 to 1943, and from 1946 to 1949. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1953. Hank Edwards. Bobby Avila played some second base. My father, I think I used to call him Avila. My father would correct me. He batted .214 with 3 hits. He scored 3 runs, had 3 RBIs, a walk in 31 games. Avila was born in 1924 in Veracruz City, Mexico, and died in 2004 in Veracruz at age 80. For his career, he batted .281 with 80 home runs and 467 RBIs. Avila played for the Cleveland Indians, Baltimore Orioles, Boston Red Sox, and the Milwaukee Braves from 1949 to 1959. He was a 3-time All-Star in 1952, 54, and 55. He won the American League batting title in 1954, playing almost the entire season with a broken thumb and hit .341. He was inducted into the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame in 1971. They called him Beto or Roberto. His given name was Roberto. 1954 in the World Series, he was in the 1954 World Series. He was the batting champion, and he faced in the '54 World Series, the batting champions faced each other. Bobby Avila in the American League and Willie Mays in the National League. He played soccer to train. He played soccer growing up, and he would kick balls out of defenders' gloves while sliding because of his soccer training. Al Lopez said that Avila had, quote, a fine swing, a sharp eye, a good spirit of competition, and a world of confidence in himself. He became mayor of Veracruz, Mexico. He was president of the Mexican Baseball League. And in Mexico, was with the Tigres del Mexico. He played in Ángeles de Puebla. Bobby Avila, Milt Nielsen played some outfield. Nielsen batted .111 with 1 hit and 9 at-bats. He scored a run, had 2 walks in 3 games. Nielsen was born in 1925 in Tyler, Minnesota, and died in 2005 in Mankato, Minnesota at age 80. For his career, he batted .067 with 1 hit and 15 at-bats and scored 2 runs. Nielsen played for the Cleveland Indians in 1949 and 1951. He was an outfielder, pinch hitter, and pinch runner. He was also played in the Caribbean Series. In the minors, he played for the San Diego Padres. Milt Nielsen. Herman Reich played some outfield. Reich batted .500 with 1 hit and 2 at-bats. He had a walk in 1 game. Reich was born in 1917 in Bell, California, and died in 2009 in Fallbrook, California at age 91. For his career, he batted .279 with 3 home runs and 34 RBIs. Reich played for the Washington Senators, Cleveland Indians, and Chicago Cubs, all in 1949. He went to Loyola Marymount University. He has the rare distinction of being part of 3 transactions in his only MLB season. The minor leagues, he played for the Eugene Emeralds, the Modesto Reds, the Yakima Bears, Portland Beavers, and Siloam Spring Travelers. Herman Reich. Fred Marsh played in 1 game, did not bat. He was a pinch runner. He was born in 1924 in Valley Falls, Kansas, and died in 2006 in Corey, Pennsylvania at age 82. For his career, he batted .239 with 10 home runs and 96 RBIs. Marsh played for the Cleveland Indians, St. Louis Browns, Washington Senators, Chicago Cubs, and Baltimore Orioles between 1949 and 1956. In the Second World War, he was in the U.S. Navy. After he retired, he spent many years working as a postal carrier. Fred Marsh. Now, the ace of the pitching staff was Bob Lemon, who was 22-10 with an ERA of 2.99, 37 games, 33 starts, 22 complete games, 2 shutouts, a save, 279 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 138 strikeouts. Lemon could hit. He batted .269 with 29 hits. He scored 17 runs, 6 doubles, 2 triples, 7 home runs, 19 RBIs, 10 walks in 46 games. Lemon was with Cleveland from 1941 to 1942, and from 1946 to 1958. Bob Lemon. Bob Feller was 15-14 with an ERA of 3.75, 36 games, 28 starts, 15 complete games, 211 innings pitched, and 108 strikeouts. Feller batted .236 with 17 hits. Scored 7 runs, had 2 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, 2 walks, and struck out 23 times. Feller was with Cleveland from 1936 to 1941, and from 1945 to 1956, and was a Tribe Goodwill Ambassador till the end of his life. Bob Feller said this about 1949, quote, "Every athlete gets to that time in his career when his numbers start to drop, and when that happens, you start to hear the whispers. You've lost a step in the field, you're not as quick, or you've lost some velocity on your fastball." Ted Williams said this about Bob Feller, quote, "That was the test. Bob Feller was the best, and I wanted to be the best. And 3 days before he pitched, I would start thinking, Robert Feller, Bob Feller. I'd sit in my room thinking and seeing him, thinking about him all the time. God, I loved it. That was a personal challenge. Bob Feller." Early Wynn was 11-7 with an ERA of 4.15, 26 games, 23 starts, 6 complete games, 164 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 62 strikeouts. Wynn batted .143 with 10 hits. He scored 3 runs, had a double, a home run, 7 RBIs, 4 walks, and struck out 10 times in 35 games. Wynn was born in 1920 in Hartford, Alabama, and died in 1999 in Venice, Florida at age 79. For his career, he won 300 games, lost 244, an ERA of 3.54, and 2,334 strikeouts. Wynn pitched for the Washington Senators, Cleveland Indians, and Chicago White Sox from 1939 to 1963. He was a 9-time All-Star in 1947 and from 1955 to 1960. He won the Cy Young Award in 1959. He was a 2-time MLB win leader in 1954 and 59, and 3-time American League ERA leader. He's a 2-time American League strikeout leader in 57 and 58. He's in the Tribe Hall of Fame, in the Washington Nationals Ring of Honor, and was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1972. They called him Gus. He was a very intimidating pitcher, the Second World War, he was in the U.S. Army and spent time in the Philippines. After he retired, he was a coach and broadcaster. The Sporting News called Wynn one of the 100 greatest players in MLB history. With Bob Feller, Bob Lemon, and Mike Garcia, he formed one of the greatest pitching rotations ever. The 1950s, he had 1,544 strikeouts, the most in MLB. For his career, he batted .214 with 17 home runs and 173 RBIs. He had 90 pinch hit at-bats and a grand slam, one of 5 MLB pitchers to have a grand slam pinch hit. He had 7 starts during 9 months between his 299th and 300th victory, most in MLB history, the longest. So he had a tough time trying to get 300. He was a coach for the Tribe and Twins, a TV broadcaster for the Toronto Blue Jays and the White Sox. His first wife, Mabel, was killed in a car accident in 1942, and then he remarried. In the 1960s, he had Early Wynn Steakhouse and bowling lanes in Venice, Florida. Early Wynn said, quote, "I'd knock down my own grandmother if she dug in on me. Why should I worry about hitters? Do they worry about me? Do you ever find a hitter crying because he's hit a line drive through the box? My job is getting hitters out. If I don't get them out, I lose. I don't like losing a game any more than a salesman likes losing a big sale. I've got a right to knock down anybody holding a bat." Asked if the batter was his mother, and he said, quote, "Mother was a pretty good curveball hitter." Mother Early Wynn threw at his 15-year-old son, Joe, in pregame batting practice. He was pitching batting practice to Joe, and there were 2 long drives in a row. The usher started to clap, and moments later, his son Joe was on his back after a knockdown pitch. Wynn said, quote, "Joe was leaning in on me, and I had to show him who was the boss." Asked to throw a high hard one. He was asked if he would throw a high hard one against his own mother, and he said, quote, "It would depend on how well she was hitting." Mel Harder said, quote, "Early Wynn was serious about every pitch, every game. He liked to have fun, but he was tough to get along with on the days he was pitching. Hitters knew it. He'd throw at anybody, whether it was Joe DiMaggio or Ted Williams. Early Wynn." Gene Bearden was 8-8 with an ERA of 5.10, 32 games, 19 starts, 5 complete games, 127 innings pitched, and 41 strikeouts. Bearden batted .111 with 5 hits. He scored 3 runs, had an RBI, 2 walks, and struck out 11 times. And Bearden was with Cleveland from 1947 to 1950. So the magic of 1948 was gone. He had trouble getting his knuckleball over the plate. Gene Bearden. Al Benton was 9-6 with an ERA of 2.12, 40 games, 11 starts, 4 complete games, 2 shutouts, 10 saves, 135 2/3 innings pitched, and 41 strikeouts. Benton batted .132 with 5 hits. He scored a run, had an RBI, a walk, and struck out 11 times. Benton was born in 1911 in Noble, Oklahoma, and died in 1968 in Linwood, California at age 57. For his career, he was 98-88 with an ERA of 3.66 and 697 strikeouts and 66 saves. Benton pitched for the Philadelphia Athletics, Detroit Tigers, Cleveland Indians, and Boston Red Sox. Between 1934 and 1952, he was a 2-time All-Star in 1941 and 42, won a World Series title in 45 with the Tigers. In the Second World War, he was in the U.S. Navy. He was the only pitcher to face Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle, Ruth in 34 and Mantle in 52. He's the only player to have 2 sacrifice bunts in the same inning. On August 6, 41 against the Tribe. In the minors, he played for the Lincoln Lynx, Chattanooga Lookouts, Memphis Chickasaws, Toledo Mudhens, and San Diego Padres. Al Benton. Mike Garcia was 14-5 with an ERA of 2.36, 41 games, 20 starts, 8 complete games, 5 shutouts, 2 saves, 175 2/3 innings pitched, and 94 strikeouts. Garcia batted .235 with 12 hits. He scored 7 runs, 2 doubles, a home run, 7 RBIs, 3 walks, and struck out 9 times. And Garcia was with Cleveland from 1948 to 1959. Mike Garcia. Steve Gromek was 4-6 with an ERA of 3.33, 27 games, 12 starts, 3 complete games, 92 innings pitched, and 22 strikeouts. Gromek batted .167 with 4 hits. He scored 2 runs, had a double, an RBI, and walked twice. and Gromek was with Cleveland from 1941 to 1953. Steve Gromek. Satchel Page was 4-7 with an ERA of 3.04, 31 games, 5 starts a complete game, 5 saves, 83 innings pitched, and 54 strikeouts. Page batted .063 with 1 hit and 16 at-bats. Walked twice and struck out 4 times. Page was with the Cleveland Cubs in 1931 in the Negro Leagues, and with the Tribe from 1948 to 1949. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. In 1948, Page called the World Series the World Serious. He was released after the 1949 season. Hank Greenberg, Tribe GM, said, quote, "Perhaps the fault was we didn't realize and appreciate enough that here was an unusual and outstanding performer who had pitched great for so many years in the Negro Leagues and wasn't about to be treated like a rookie." Page barnstormed for the Chicago American Giants in 1950. By 1951, Bill Veeck owned the St. Louis Browns and signed Satchel Page. In 52, Page went 12-10 with the Browns and led the American League relief pitchers in innings pitched and relief wins and had 10 saves and an ERA of 3.07. Tremendous year. One of the best relievers in 1952. On August 6, 1952, he had a complete game, 12 innings pitched, a shutout, 1-0 against Detroit, the longest complete game shutout in MLB in 52. Groucho Marx visited the fitness room at that time while Page was in the whirlpool, and Groucho Marx wanted his autograph. 1954, Page was playing for the baseball Harlem Globetrotters. In 55, he was with the Kansas City Monarchs. In 56, he was in the minors for the Miami Marlins. Played 3 years there. 3 years there and was effective. With the Marlins, with his teammates, they were playing a word game called Ghost. A player was supposed to start a word with the first letter, and then you're supposed to try to figure out what the word was and take turns adding letters. Page started off with the letter Q, and one of the guys doubted if Page knew a letter that started with a Q, and Page said, quote, "Cucumber, give me my quarter." So he got the nickname Q after that. He was friends with Duke Ellington and Fats Domino. In 1959, he was with the Havana Cubans. And then he was with the Kansas City Monarchs. In the minors, he was with the Portland Beavers in 1961. In 1965, he was in Alaska and met Richard Nixon, who became U.S. President in 1968. Nixon said, quote, "I've always wanted to greet a celebrity." And in MLB, Page had a perfect fielding percentage of 1,000. He fielded all 79 balls hit to him cleanly, although he batted .098 with 12 hits and 123 at-bats. 1965, Charlie Finley owned the Kansas City Athletics. He signed Satchel Page. On September 25, 1965, Page pitched 3 innings, got a strikeout and no walks, and no runs allowed at age 59, an MLB record. His biographer Larry Tye wrote, quote, "Satchel Page was the only Negro League legend who lived to savor life in the major leagues. His slow shuffle from the bullpen to the mound was likened to an amiable camel." Page got a speeding ticket in Wyoming, $25. He gave the cop a $50 bill and started the car, and the cop said, quote, "Wait a minute, here's your change." And Page answered, quote, "Keep it. I'm coming back here the same way next week." Bob Feller wrote, quote, "Writing a book about Satchel Page is kind of like writing a book about Cooperstown. While it's a great story, Abner Doubleday didn't invent the game of baseball, so all these things they said about it are myths. But I'm glad they have a Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and I'm glad Satchel Page is in it." Larry Tye wrote, quote, "Understanding that sports was part showbiz, part religion, he did more than any player to spread the gospel of baseball, and with it the story of Satchel Page. He had 2 autobiographies, Pitchin' Man in 1948 and Maybe I'll Pitch Forever in 1962. Larry Tye wrote, quote, "Satchel Page was like Babe Ruth. Both rose above reform school roots. Both were boyish men with oversized appetites from food to women to sports." By 1971, he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and U.S. President Richard Nixon wrote, quote, "If you still persist in not looking back, your many friends and admirers are pleased to do so for you." By 1968, he was the pitching coach for the Atlanta Braves. He died in 1982. There was a graveside memorial in Kansas City, and it was written, quote, thrilling millions with his extraordinary pitching feats, the most celebrated moundsman in the history of our national pastime. Leroy became Satchel, and Satchel became a legend. Satchel Page. Now, the bullpen included Sam Zoldak, who was a relief pitcher who was 1-2 with an ERA of 4.25, 27 games, 53 innings pitched, and 11 strikeouts. Zoldak batted .375 with 3 hits and 8 at-bats. He scored a run and struck out twice. And Zoldak was with Cleveland from 1948 to 1950. Sam Zoldak. And finally, Frank Papish was 1-0 with an ERA of 3.19, 25 games, 3 starts, a complete game, a save, 62 innings pitched, and 23 strikeouts. Papish batted .125 with 1 hit and 8 at-bats. He scored a run and walked twice. He was born in 1917 in Pueblo, Colorado, and died in 1965 in Pueblo at age 47. For his career, he was 26-29 with an ERA of 3.58 and 255 strikeouts. Papish played for the Chicago White Sox, Cleveland Indians, and Pittsburgh Pirates between 1945 and 1950. The minors, he played for the Rock Island Islanders and Dallas Steers, the Birmingham Barons, Little Rock Travelers, Minneapolis Millers, Chattanooga Lookouts, and Memphis Chickasaws. Frank Papish. The 1949 World Series, the New York Yankees, American League champions, defeated the Brooklyn Dodgers, National League champions, 4-1. Another Subway Series in New York City. This was the first of a record 5 straight Yankee World Series titles. The Yankees were the first to have won. They won 14 pennants in 16 years. In this World Series, Hall of Famers included umpire Cal Hubbard. For the Yankees, Casey Stengel, the manager, Yogi Berra, Joe DiMaggio, Johnny Mize, Phil Rizzuto. And for the Dodgers, Roy Campanella, Duke Snider, Pee Wee Reese, and Jackie Robinson. I'm reading a fine book. The title is Dynasty, the New York Yankees, 1949 to 1964. When rooting for the Yankees was like rooting for United States Steel, by Peter Golenbach, 1975. 1949 was Casey Stengel's first year managing the Yankees, and he was 60 years old. He considered retiring, but he got the offer to manage the Yankees, and Stengel said, quote, I at once commenced not thinking of retirement. When he was hired at his press conference, he was asked about his plans regarding the Yankees, and he said, quote, last seen the Yankees a couple years back. Now I must study the Yankee situation, and then I will commence to draw conclusions. Chub Feeney, who was vice president of the New York Giants, said, quote, in 1949, the Negro Leagues were the most logical place in the world to look for ball players. There were 3 integrated teams in 1949, Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants, and the Cleveland Indians. And the Giants had Monty Irvin. In June of 1949, Ruth Ann Steinhagen, who was a mentally ill fan, shot the Philadelphia Phillies player Eddie Watkins, and Bernard Malamud fictionalized this incident in his novel The Natural, which became a movie starring Robert Redford. Casey Stengel said this about Joe DiMaggio. I got this fellow who sucks up all the glory and plays only when he feels like playing. I never had one like that before. What am I going to do? On October 1st, 1949 was Joe DiMaggio Day at Yankee Stadium, and DiMaggio gave a speech, and he said, quote, I thank the good Lord for making me a Yankee. The Brooklyn Dodgers shortstop Pee Wee Reese, at age 15, was the National Boys Marble Champion. I'm reading another fine book, The Summer of '49 by David Halberstam, 1989, the classic chronicle of baseball's most magnificent season, as seen through the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry. David Halberstam wrote, quote, the year was 1949, and a war-weary nation turned from the battlefields to the ball fields in search of new heroes. It was a summer that marked the beginning of a sports rivalry unequaled in the annals of athletic competition. The awesome New York Yankees and the indomitable Boston Red Sox were fighting for supremacy of baseball's American League, and an aging Joe DiMaggio and a brash, headstrong hitting phenomenon named Ted Williams led their respective teams. In a classic pennant duel of almost mythic proportions, one that would be decided in an explosive head-to-head confrontation on the last day of the season. Dan Daniel was a famous sports writer of this era. He was elderly and sometimes fell asleep during games. One of the guys said, quote, should we wake him up? No, he's busy interviewing John McGraw. Now, television started to affect baseball and specifically umpires. Sports writer Red Smith wrote, quote, "Today, conscious of the great unseen audience, the umpires play every decision out like the balcony scene of Romeo and Juliet. On a strike, they gesticulate. They brandish a fist aloft. They spin almost as shot through the heart. They bellow all four parts of the quartet Rigoletto. On a pitch that misses the plate, they stiffen with loathing, ostentiously avert the gaze, and render a bit from Götterdämmerung. The virus is affecting the fans, too. When a foul is hit in the stands, the camera is trained on the fan who recovers the ball. Used to be that a guy catching a foul would pocket his loot almost furtively and go on watching the game. Today he wheels toward the camera, holds his prize aloft, shouts, and makes faces. Television is making us a nation of hams." Game 1 of the 1949 World Series was the first baseball game to have a mass audience. 10 million people watched the game on television, and Gillette paid $800,000 to advertise. The 1966 movie The Graduate, there's the Paul Simon wrote the song, quote, "Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? A nation turns its lonely eyes to you." There was a 1964 old-timers game, and after which there was a party, Red Sox and Yankees. Johnny Pesky was welcomed at a table of old Yankees. David Halberstam wrote, quote, "The Yankees and Red Sox had played hard, and they had made each other better because of the rivalry. They had always respected each other. The old struggles were finally over." Bobby Dorr of the Red Sox said this to Tommy Henrich of the Yankees, quote, "Tom, didn't we have a good ball club?" Henrich responded, quote, "You had a great ball club. We were always afraid of you." "Then why didn't we win?" Yankee catcher Yogi Berra coined the phrase, "It ain't over till it's over." Now the MVPs for 1949 in the American League, Ted Williams of the Boston Red Sox. In the National League, Jackie Robinson of the Brooklyn Dodgers. So that's the story of the 1949 Cleveland Indians. They had a tremendous year. God bless the guys who played for the Cleveland Indians in 1949 and everyone else associated with the team, including the fans, especially the Spanish-American War veterans, First World War veterans, and Second World War veterans. Captains of the Cuyahoga, lovers of Lake Erie, Terminal Tower Power, fans of the Free Stamp statue and the Fountain of Eternal Life, Euclid Avenue Electricity, Severance Hall stalwarts, Cleveland Museum of Art enthusiasts, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum rebels, Christmas Story House happy people, Museum of Contemporary Art maniacs, Cleveland Botanical Garden goers, Old Arcade admirers, Playhouse Square seers, Settlers Landing Park purists, Western Reserve Historical Society wonders, First Energy Stadium friends, Progressive Field pals, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse renegades, Cuyahoga Valley National Park pioneers, Great Lakes Science Center supporters, Tribe, Browns, Cavs, Monsters, Gladiators, and Fusion Rule, Cleveland City of Champions. Cleveland is the best location in the nation on the north coast of America. New York is the Big Apple. Cleveland is a plum. It's been 71 years since 1948. This is our year. Go Tribe. You might consider checking out our website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care. And I'll see you next time.